dreamers to the night owl tales.
Shoo! The stars are out and the world is quiet. Welcome to the Night Owl Tales. Tonight's story is Mira and the Mushroom Village. Deep inside the whispering woods, where moonlight dripped through silver leaves, lay a meadow dotted with bright red mushrooms. Each mushroom was a home, and each home had a fairy. Among them lived a tiny fairy named Mira, the smallest of them all. Mira's house was the tiniest mushroom at the edge of the meadow. It had a petal curtain for a door, a bed made of moss, and a window shaped like a heart that looked out over the glittering forest. Every morning, she'd hum softly as she swept the dew from her doorstep and fed crumbs of honey cake to the beetle who lived nearby. But despite her cozy life, Mira always felt a little left out. When the larger fairies gathered each evening, they spoke of their grand tasks. The glow fairies lit the fireflies to guide travelers. The breeze fairies shaped the wind into lullabies. The petal fairies painted colors on flowers before dawn. Mira, on the other hand, was simply the mushroom sweeper. Her job was to keep the moss soft and the homes clean. "It's important work," said Elder Pollen, the oldest fairy in the meadow. But still, Mira sighed. "I wish I could do something bigger." That evening, while the fairies danced in the silver moonlight, Mira sat on her doorstep, watching fireflies blink like stars on earth. The wind brushed past her wings, whispering secrets from the tall trees. She gazed up at the sky. "Maybe," she whispered, "one day I'll have a chance to shine too." And just then, far beyond the forest, a low rumble rolled through the clouds. The air grew heavy, and the fireflies dimmed. The moon hid behind grey mist. Mira looked around. The wind had changed. The forest, once full of songs and laughter, grew quiet. Even the crickets stopped chirping. From the distance came the first drop of rain. Then another, and then the heavens opened wide. Mira rushed inside as thunder cracked across the sky. Water poured from the leaves like waterfalls. She pressed her face to her tiny window and gasped. The streams around the meadow were swelling fast. Her mushroom house trembled in the storm's fury. And as lightning flashed, Mira saw it. The lower meadow was flooding, and her friends' mushroom homes were in danger of being swept away. She took a shaky breath. Her wings quivered. She was small, but maybe, just maybe, this was her moment to do something big. The storm swept through the whispering woods with a roar that shook the tallest trees. Rain fell so heavily, it seemed the sky itself was crying. The soft moss under Mira's feet turned into rivers of mud, and tiny rivulets rushed past her mushroom house like silver snakes. Inside her warm little home, Mira's candle flickered weakly. Her teacup rattled. A gust of wind blew open her window with a sharp clang. She hurried to close it, but as she peered outside, her heart skipped. Down the meadow, the other mushrooms were swaying dangerously. Their roots were half soaked, and the rushing rainwater was rising fast. The larger fairies were struggling to fly against the wind, their wings too broad to slip through the fierce gusts. Mira's hands trembled. She was scared. The wind howled like a dragon, and lightning flashed across the sky. But when she looked again at her friends' mushroom homes, she knew she couldn't just watch. "I may be small," she whispered, "but I'm not helpless." She tied a vine around her waist and fastened the other end to her doorknob, a lifeline in case the wind tried to carry her away. Then, with a deep breath, she pushed open her door and stepped into the storm. Rain stung her face like icy pebbles. Her wings beat quickly, fluttering hard to keep balance. The thunder growled above her, but she didn't stop. She darted between falling drops, gliding low where the wind was softer. Mira reached the first mushroom Little Pip's house. It leaned dangerously, its stem cracking near the base. Mira zipped underneath and began to tie thick threads of spider silk she carried in her satchel. She looped them around the mushroom stem and anchored them to the roots of a nearby tree. "Hold on, Pip! Your home won't fall tonight!" Her voice was nearly drowned by the storm, but she kept working. Next, she flew to Luna's home, then Tello's weaving, looping, securing her small hands, moving fast as lightning flashed again and again. Every fairy home she tied down felt like a victory. But the rain grew heavier and the wind stronger. Mira's wings began to ache, and her vine lifeline tugged hard as the water rose to her knees. Then, just as she secured the last mushroom, she heard a faint cry. "Help, please!" She turned sharply. Through the rain's curtain, she saw a little glow, a baby glow bug clinging to a blade of grass, its light flickering weakly. Mira gasped. The water was almost over its head. Without a thought, she took a step forward into the swirling flood. The storm howled louder than ever. Rain poured like silver threads from the sky, and the meadow had become a rushing stream. Mira could barely see through the curtain of water, but that faint, trembling light, the baby glowbug called to her heart. "Hold on!" she shouted. Though her voice was swallowed by thunder, she tightened the vine around her waist and stepped deeper into the cold water. It tugged at her legs, strong and wild, trying to sweep her away. But Mira leaned forward, wings beating hard, pushing against the current. Each step felt heavier than the last. Her wings were soaked, her hair plastered to her face, but she kept her eyes on that tiny flicker of light. It blinked weakly once, twice, then almost went out. "No," she cried. "You're not giving up now." She reached out her hand just as a wave rushed past. The glowbug slipped from the blade of grass and Mira dove, catching it in her palms just before it could disappear into the current. The tiny creature trembled, its glow faint and fading. Mira cupped her hands gently around it, shielding it from the rain. "There, there," she whispered. "You're safe now." She turned back toward her mushroom house, but the water had risen higher. Her lifeline vine had snapped, torn loose by the current. The world beyond was now a blur of rain and foam. She couldn't see the path home anymore. Mira's wings quivered. The storm had swallowed the meadow whole. Still, she refused to panic. She looked around and spotted the roots of a great willow tree nearby, half submerged but strong and wide. She fluttered toward it and crawled into a hollow between the roots, curling up with a glowbug in her lap. The storm raged on. Thunder rolled like drums across the sky, but inside the hollow, it was a little warmer, a little quieter. Mira tore a piece of moss from her satchel and wrapped it around the glowbug like a tiny blanket. The glowbug's light pulsed weakly, then began to steady. It blinked at her once, twice, and nestled into her palms. A tiny beam of gold shone from between her fingers. Mira smiled, her tired eyes soft. See, even in the darkest night, there's always a little light left. The glow bug blinked brighter, and suddenly Mira realized that light wasn't just glowing, it was spreading. Lines of soft gold traced through the floodwater, winding their way through the meadow like veins of light. Mira gasped. What's happening? Outside, through the rain. The glow spread further, reaching every mushroom house she had saved. And then, faintly in the distance, she heard something impossible, the singing of the storm itself. The wind still roared above the whispering woods, but inside the willow's hollow, everything felt different. The little glowbug's golden light had spread through the floodwater, shimmering like liquid sunlight. Mira stared in awe. She had never seen magic like this before. The storm, once wild and fierce, began to hum. It wasn't thunder now. It was music. A deep, gentle rhythm rolled through the trees, a song ancient and soft. The rain fell in perfect time, each drop landing like a note on a drum. The wind whistled a tune between the branches, and the river added a low, flowing harmony. Mira's heart fluttered. The storm is singing! The glowbug blinked brighter, as if nodding in agreement. The tiny creature lifted off from her hands and began to float in circles, trailing gold light through the hollow. Mira followed, her eyes wide. The light touched her wet wings, and to her astonishment they began to shimmer. Not silver now, but bright gold. She felt warmth rush through her, like courage itself had taken form. The golden veins in the water stretched all the way through the meadow, wrapping each mushroom home in a glowing shield. The flood began to slow, the wind softened, and the rain turned from pounding sheets to gentle mist. Mira stepped out from the hollow, her wings glowing softly in the dim light. The storm above seemed to recognize her. Its song shifted, lowering into a peaceful hum. Lightning flashed one last time, but it wasn't frightening anymore. It was beautiful white and gold, spiraling like ribbons across the sky. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the storm began to fade. The clouds drifted apart, revealing the first hints of dawn. Drops of rain hung on every petal and leaf, sparkling like 1,000 tiny stars. Mira stood there in silence, holding the glowbug close. She looked across the meadow. Every mushroom home stood safely, their doors intact, their windows dry. Not one had been lost. She couldn't help but laugh softly, tears of relief in her eyes. "We did it," she whispered. "We saved the village." The glowbug blinked happily in reply, its little light twinkling in rhythm with Mira's heartbeat. And just when Mira thought the magic had ended, she heard a voice carried by the soft, fading wind, low, warm, and kind. "Tiny one, you have found your melody." She looked around, startled. "Who said that?" But there was no one, only the whisper of the breeze, curling around her like a secret. Morning sunlight spilled gently over the whispering woods. The storm was gone, the air smelled of wet earth and blooming moss, and the sky shone a soft pastel gold. The once wild river now whispered quietly through the trees, its song peaceful and slow. Mira blinked awake beneath the willow roots. The glowbug still rested beside her, its light now small and steady like a candle in a calm room. She stretched her tired wings and gasped. They still shimmered faintly with gold, the color of the storm's song. When she stepped outside, the meadow looked almost new. The mushroom homes gleamed, washed clean by the rain, their caps glistening like polished rubies. Tiny rainbows danced on every drop. Then she heard a sound, not thunder this time, but laughter. The fairies were awake, fluttering through the air in joy. "Look!" shouted little Pip, his silver wings flashing. "Our homes are safe, none washed away." "And who tied the silks that saved them?" asked Elder Pollen knowingly, his eyes twinkling. Every fairy turned toward Mira. She froze, embarrassed. Her hair was tangled, her dress soaked, and she still had bits of moss on her elbows. "I just did what I could," she mumbled. But before she could say more, the air shimmered with silver dust. A figure appeared tall and radiant, her wings glowing like moonlight. It was Queen Seraphina, ruler of the fairy realms. The other fairies bowed low, wings fluttering. Mira quickly did the same. The queen's voice was soft but strong. "Who was it?" she asked. "Who tied the homes and carried the light of courage through the storm?" Elder Pollen pointed gently. "It was her, Your Majesty, Mira, of the Mushroom Village." The queen's eyes fell upon the tiny fairy. "Step forward, child." Mira did, her heart thumping like a drum. The queen reached out her hand and brushed a drop of water from Mira's cheek. It sparkled and turned into a golden star before floating upward. "You have done what many thought impossible," said the queen. "You turned fear into music, darkness into light, and weakness into strength. Tell me, do you know what you truly are?" Mira shook her head. The queen smiled. "You are a storm fairy, little one born not to cause storms, but to calm them. The song you heard was your own magic, answering the call of the rain." Mira's eyes widened. "My own magic?" The queen nodded. "Yes, and now the meadow shall always be under your care." She raised her wand, and a circle of golden dust swirled around Mira, wrapping her in warmth. "From this day forth," the queen declared, "you shall be known as Mira, keeper of the meadow, protector of every petal, root, and raindrop that lives within." The other fairies cheered. Pip twirled in the air, Luna clapped her tiny hands. Even the glowbug buzzed happily, tracing little circles of light around Mira's head. Mira blushed, smiling softly. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I promise I'll always keep the meadow safe." That night, as the stars bloomed across the velvet sky, Mira returned to her little mushroom home. She opened her heart-shaped window and watched the fireflies dance, their lights twinkling like her own. The glowbug slept by her pillow, the forest hummed its quiet song, and Mira whispered to the night. Even the smallest fairy can hold the biggest magic. And with that, the keeper of the meadow closed her eyes and drifted into dreams of gold and rain and song. The end.
Good night, little dreamers. The Night Owl Tales.